A messy job? Well, that's when they usually call on me or someone like me. We are the Spy-Fi guys, and this is Danger Man. Welcome to the Spy-Fi guys, where we cover spy facts, spy fiction, and everything in between. I'm Christian.
I'm Zach.
And welcome to part 3 of our Swinging 60s Spy Summer. All this summer, we'll be breaking with our usual formula to cover exclusively fictional spy movies and TV shows made or set during the golden age of spy cinema, the 1960s. So grab your go-go boots and put on your ascot. It's time to get groovy.
And this week we are covering Danger Man or Secret Agent, depending on which part of the country or when you're watching it.
So we watched these through Roku, and I guess they're the British version, so it was Danger Man. So we didn't get the theme song, which I was disappointed with, because that is a go-to for karaoke for me.
Wait, what's the theme song? Why did you guys cover the show? What is the deal with the show? What is this show's lasting impact on pop culture?
It's the theme song. It's Secret Agent Man by Johnny Rivers, and I will not sing it because this is not a podcast about me singing, but it's a great song. They used it, I believe, in the first Austin Powers, and it's been used a lot.
Yeah, I mean, everyone must be familiar with it. It's the one that goes, Secret Agent Man, Secret Agent Man. I'm willing to sing a little bit. Or I seriously know people who honestly think the lyric is Secret Agent Man.
I have heard that, yes.
Speaking of misread lyrics, it's like the Long Kiss Goodnight episode where we're talking about that.
Yeah. So speaking of theme songs, that we forgot to mention this a few episodes ago, but what do you think of our new theme song for our 60s spy series?
Oh, it sounds great. I definitely appreciate that it mixes it up. It feels like it's a true special event this summer.
And that's credit to a friend of the podcast, so Jer. So thank you for that, Jer. All right, so shall we get into this?
Yeah, so in order to get a pretty good idea of the show, we watched 2 of the highest rated episodes we were able to get our hands on via IMDb. We use the Roku channel. There are quite a few episodes of the show on YouTube. So if you want to check it out, that might be a good place to go. So our first episode we covered was from the first season, which was a American finance production. I believe it was based in Britain. The episodes were shorter. This one was only 25 minutes. So we covered Josetta. So,
third episode of the first season, right?
I believe so, yes.
All right, so here is the synopsis of our first episode, Josetta, from IMDb. A foreign senator is murdered in the presence of his blind relative, Josetta. Rioting ensues due to a rumor that the American government was behind the killing, and NATO agent John Drake sent in.
So that about covers it, I guess.
This was interesting. So does every episode start with like really loud sounds and like disjointed images?
You mean like how this one begins with this carnival?
Yeah. So we got that. Yeah, carnival. They call it a fiesta later on.
Yes.
But it really looks like just your average American carnival.
Mm-hmm.
And then we cut to a blind pianist. What was her character's name? I don't actually remember.
I think they call her by her last name a lot, which doesn't help.
All right. On IMDb, her first name is Josetta. I have her note in my notes as just like the sister, but Senorita Ingress.
Right. So she's playing the piano using Braille music. So that's pretty cool. And she gets a visitor named Senor De Silva.
De Silva says that he has an appointment with her brother Miguel, but everyone else is at the festival, so it's just them there. And as they're waiting, she can hear because she's blind. Her other senses are enhanced, so not to the degree of Daredevil, but
unfortunately, no.
Yeah.
But that'll come up later, so let's remember that. So her brother comes home and he recognizes De Silva. De Silva pulls a gun and shoots him dead, basically.
Yep.
Which this reminded me of James Bond because you have the party and then someone getting murdered. That seems to be like a common James Bond cold opening.
Or just any sort of crime show as well.
It reminds you of more like Law and Order, where it's 2 people having an inane conversation and they find a dead body.
That's how like every episode of Hawaii Five-0 starts too, I feel like. But so we go into
the opening now.
Yeah, we go into that opening where. So I think is it only in the first season where they have this sort of opening monologue?
It appears that way, yes.
Again,
so
without the Secret Agent Man soundtrack, which I was disappointed by. But so we get introduced.
But I kind of like the music.
Yeah, and it was fine. It's just I was expecting because like you said, the cultural legacy of this show. is a Secret Agent Man theme song. And so I was expecting it, and when it wasn't, I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But we're introduced to John Drake. I like how they did the James Bond like intro line, which, although this is filmed in 1960, so this is actually before the first James Bond film came out in 1962. So was that just the way people introduced themselves in like back in the day?
I feel like people say that. But James Bond, I guess, just became the one who did it the best. So that's the one who gets remembered. The one we watched is he names a bunch of agencies. He's like, England is MI5, France is Ian Bureau, America's CIA, and NATO also has its own.
I was wondering if that was a reference to the Man from U.N.C.L.E., which they work for some sort of like NATO. Oh wait, no, that's not NATO. No, I'm thinking of UNIT from Doctor Who, the United Nations Intelligence Task Force.
Well, I really like that he works for NATO, and I'm surprised that more movies don't do it because it's a way to have international people on your team without having it be something like UNIT, which is like very clearly fictional.
Or is it?
Or is it, right?
We find out that apparently there's some anti-American riots that are happening in this. Did we ever find out what country this is supposed to be?
They say Sao Paulo, or maybe that's the city. I think it's a reference to Sao Paulo, but maybe they didn't want to use the actual one.
So, like a lot of these shows in the 60s where they use a lot of fictional countries because they don't want to actually name a country and have any sort of like blowback.
Right. So they say the U.S. was blamed for the murder of this senator, and it's going to cause all kinds of international problems unless Drake can find the real killer.
So do we know why that they're blaming the Americans? Like, there's no real reason, is there?
I would imagine that the opposition,
and
I don't know if he calls them the opposition in this episode or a later one. I'll have to check. I would imagine they have like a hidden hand, like a hidden agenda going on.
Okay. Anyway, so we have Drake, comes to the sister's house, and there's a colonel there who's like the chief of police. Drake interviews her. What is her accent? It like seems to stray between Russian and like Spanish.
They're very different sounding than everybody else.
Anyway, so we find out that apparently she smelled like a very distinct perfume that the guy had, or cologne that the guy had on, and she heard the man, and apparently as he shot. As the Silva shot her brother, there was like a distinct gasp, as if he was like surprised or shocked. Maybe he wasn't entirely in it. Yeah,
she has a pretty smart observation where she's like, De Silva is a false name because I said De Silva to the brother and he didn't recognize it, but he recognized the guy's face.
Mm-hmm.
So that was pretty smart.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of like, okay, wait, is this going to be more like a detective show?
That's what it seemed like.
Indeed.
But I mean, if you remember back to Dr. No, the first James Bond movie, that almost felt more like a detective than a spy as well. So maybe it was just
at least the first, yeah.
Yeah. So the colonel, what was his name?
Colonel Segur. I also said Segura, but that's Tom Segura. I think it's Segur, yeah.
Segur. So Colonel Segur said wants Drake to go home. Apparently the army party, because there's a political party that's just made up of the army, is whipping the rioters into a panic, and once they reach a threshold, the army will, take over and form like what's the word I'm looking for? Provisionary government. And the colonel, Colonel's a good, upstanding guy. He doesn't want that.
I like the part here where he like opens the door for Drake to leave, and Drake closes it with his fingers. That was like kind of a cool move.
Yeah,
like, I don't think I'm leaving.
And so we find out that their only suspect is Lieutenant Cortez, who apparently has a bunch of gambling debts.
They also refer to Josetta as the girl at this part. I also think it's kind of funny that they're talking about the details of the case within her earshot, because if she can hear a car coming down the driveway, she can totally hear them, but she doesn't catch on, or she doesn't let on, I mean.
Drake goes to the local casino to gamble with Cortez, very James Bond move.
Yeah, like Christian's got it like this. He's even wearing a tuxedo.
I did appreciate the very 60s tuxedos I think they had like shawl collar lapels, which is also like the classic James Bond look.
Again, before James Bond.
True. Actually, in my notes I have nice tuxedos.
Okay. So at this part, he meets Cortez, and as the audience, we know that Cortez is the killer because we recognize him.
Because we can see him. And and he has some device which he was able to record the audio of Cortez talking, and they play it back for Senorita Ingress, and she recognizes the voice. And how did Drake get a hold of the cologne?
That's a good question.
Like, did
That's a
he
great question.
somehow get close enough to him to smell it and recognize it? Like, like Batman, who has every scent memorized.
Well, didn't he like hold up a bottle of something?
Yeah, so that's what I was wondering. How did he get a hold of that?
Okay, so my theory is like Batman. He smells it, then he goes to a perfume store and like smells every single one until he finds the right one. So
Could
this
be.
episode is really short. As I said, it goes really fast. So you got to keep up. Unlike our other one, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah. So Senorita Ingress recognizes the voice and the perfume.
They found the killer.
They found it, but it's not going to hold up in court with just the word of the blind sister, and who recognizes a voice and a perfume. So what they really need is they need to get Cortez to slip up.
Drake even uses the term break him. It's all intense.
Yeah. So Drake asks for the colonel for an electronics expert, and says, "Okay, I'll set you up." He goes to his car and he gets ambushed by Cortez and one of Cortez's henchmen.
Right.
And they threaten him to leave. They say, you should leave, get out of here. And he drives back to his hotel. And there's a woman waiting for him in his room, who claims that that he and Drake invited her up. But of course, this is not true because we've seen that, he just came from the house, unless there's something we didn't see.
Right. So this reminds me of a story about my dad.
Oh.
This is my dad's story, okay?
Oh.
So he was on a business trip once. This is a true story. And he got a text from an unknown number that was like, "Hey, I had a really good time last night." And he's like, "That's great, but you have the wrong number." And the number writes back to him is like, "What, you don't want to see me again?" And my dad was like, "Seriously, you have the wrong number. Stop talking to me." And he thinks it was like a blackmail scheme.
That sounds right, yeah.
Anyway, but this time it was really poorly handled.
There's a knock at the door. Like, he's trying to get her to leave. Like, is like, "I don't know who you are. What's going? Get out of here." And there's a knock at the door, and it's Cortez and his henchman. And we find out that this is supposedly the henchman's wife.
Yeah, and there's a part where he says, "Should I know it?" Something I say a lot about actors, so I thought that was funny.
Mm-hmm.
So they knock him out, and they put a gun in his hand.
Mm-hmm. And they fire it.
Yeah, I was watching it with my sister, and she thought they were going to cut off his fingers.
Oh.
I was like, "You've been watching too many shows from 2020, not shows from 1960.
All right. And so next we have a scene with the colonel still in the hotel room, and apparently they have 3 witnesses, and so they really can't dispute it. But he's going to go and try to see if he can clear it up with one of the judges. He introduces Drake to the electronics expert, whose name I don't have written down.
Yeah, I don't have it down either. The plan is they're going to use this electronics expert to get Josetta to be able to see, in quotation marks.
Yeah. So basically, they set her up with like an earpiece, which allows Drake to direct her to where she's going, so that she can make it appear like she can see. So, she won't be using her hands or like a stick to guide her. She's just going to be walking very confidently. So they set up in her house to practice. Like, they move stuff around for her. Like, they move a chair that's usually there, so she can't use it to guide herself. And then as a test, they have the colonel arrive. Well, I like this part. He takes out. There's some flowers. She takes out a single flower, puts it next to the cigarette box. When the colonel comes in, she offers him a cigarette and sees that and quote unquote sees that there's a flower loose. He's like, "Oh, that's a shame," and puts it back. And all the while, the colonel's like, "Wait, what? How can you know? How can you see that?" So the test runs well.
It doesn't really work on TV because blind people can't focus your eyes on anything. So unless Cortez is like an idiot, which I guess he could be, there's no way this would actually work.
And we also find out that apparently Drake needs to appear before the court tomorrow. The colonel wasn't able to work all of his magic, but that's okay because they're going to take action tonight.
So it's like, why even have the whole court thing be
I don't know. I think
it doesn't affect the plot. It's
to add like a ticking clock.
Okay. I don't feel like the episode really needed it, but whatever.
I mean, it's short enough that it's got to move very quickly anyways. So the sister Senorita Ingress makes an appearance in a restaurant where Cortez is.
Right.
With his henchman and his henchman's wife. I think they're all there.
Yes. But, yeah. Well, they got the henchman's wife for one scene, so they're like, let's just use
Yeah.
her again.
So Cortez is very confused when he sees her walking in, very confidently walking down the stairs. And like, I like this. So Drake is speaking into his watch, basically, directing her, and is saying, "All right, take out your compact mirror, look at it, you look at yourself in it," and it's like, "Oh, that's pretty good. That's stuff that really gives a hint that she can see." He even directs her to go over to Cortez's table and have him glare at him and then leave.
Yes. And again, so this is the thing with something else that just occurred to me is that when he saw her before, she was blind very clearly. So it's like, did he suddenly magically somehow be able to see in the last 24 hours?
Or, well, I mean, it puts that idea in his mind so that he gets it, that maybe she can see. Maybe she's not actually blind. I don't know. Maybe she just had like some sort of injury that morning, but it's healed up now. Who knows? But it puts that into his head. Like, wait, can she see? Am I screwed here?
Yeah, don't worry about it, I guess.
She leaves, and Cortez follows. So Drake is back at the house, and has her go up to her room and turn on the lights.
And this is when the funky music starts. Do you watch the subtitles? Subtitles says funky music at this part.
Oh, that's so funny. So he sneaks in, goes to a window, and he uses the old diamond cut, using a diamond cut through glass. But I like that it wasn't like a perfect circle that you usually see. It looked like it would actually look, where turns out bad. But he only uses it to like break into part of it, so he can open the window the rest of the way. And he goes up to the sister's door, sees the sister's looking out the window, and he just cold-blooded shoots her a bunch of times.
Yeah, like 5 or 6 times. Even though it doesn't react to getting hit by the bullet.
Yeah. But of course, it's a dummy.
Yes, it's a mannequin wearing her clothes.
The colonel's there in the room, arrests Cortez. They've got their man, and like that, it just pretty much wraps up with that. Yeah,
there's just one line where he says, "This will put an end to the general's plan." It's like, oh, right, there's a general. There's like a whole thing going on. I forgot about it.
Yeah, that's the end of the episode.
Yeah, these classic ones are known for these really sudden endings. It's not like Star Trek where they have like a wrap-up scene where they like talk about
and then have a laugh and freeze frame.
Sure.
All right, so did you have any? I didn't have any favorite quotes from this one. Did you have any favorite quotes?
No, the dialogue went so fast. I barely had time to write down anything.
All right. How did you want to rate this episode? As a reminder for our viewers, when we do our ratings, they're from 1 to 10 martinis, 1 being the worst spy movie or TV show you've ever seen, and 10 being the absolute pinnacle of the best.
So it's a good question. I feel like this episode was okay. It had some pretty good moments. It was slightly above average, though. I will give it a 6 out of 10.
6 out of 10. I'm gonna join you with that. Like, I think it was okay. Like, I'm wondering if we watch the very first episode, if there's more introduction to Drake, or if it's just in like this as well.
I think the opening text is like all you're gonna get.
So it's like Star Trek or one of those series where it's just like you just sort of jump into it and there's really no direct continuity, a lot of continuity between episodes. It's really gonna change things.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay, all right.
Or it's like Superman, where with like the old cartoon, the Max Fleischer cartoon, where it's like doomed world, desperate scientists, last hope, grateful parents, or whatever, and then you just go, you figure it out.
Okay, but yeah, so I think it's 6. Like it's like I've never seen the show before, so it was very interesting, and it was definitely the shortest of any sort of like spy media that I've seen. It was like a quick 25 minutes.
The fact that it went so quickly, I really appreciate it. It was like a pretty simple story. It was executed well, and I wasn't bored. As you may recall, that's my biggest concern when watching this stuff. Hi, Spy-Fi fans. We have a promotion for you.
This is not an ad.
No, it is not.
We're offering you a chance to win a free Spy-Fi Guys t-shirt if you live in the US or Canada.
All you have to do is leave a 5-star review for this podcast on iTunes and use the code word SUMMER in the review.
That's the code word SUMMER.
You have until the end of the Swinging 60s summer, so the end of September 2021.
We will select our winner at random from all the entries received.
Again, that's a 5-star written review with the code word SUMMER for your chance to win.
Good luck, and thank you for listening. All right, so
Mhm.
let's move on to our next episode. Season 3, episode 15, Whatever Happened to George Foster. All right, and the synopsis from IMDb is Drake discovers that a woman is financing political agitators in Santo Marco, trying to bring down the government. He sets out to find out who employs her and why.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so we start with, again, like, this is why I asked, because this one also starts with like a very, sort of very disjointed, jarring filmmaking with loud noises. So I was like, does every episode start like this?
Well, doesn't this one begin with the opening credits
I guess no,
with like
the credits.
graphics?
That happens like later after after this cold open.
Oh, okay.
So we have like rioting in a South American country. Is this Drake here that we see at first? I wasn't sure because I kind of forgot what Drake looked like.
What? Yeah, no, that's him in
Okay.
like a tan suit.
Okay. So yeah, so Drake is watching a woman hand out these packets,
Hmm.
and we're not sure what's in these packets. And then so Drake goes and grabs a man who has one of the packets, beats him up, roughs him up a little, and grabs a packet. And we find out there's cash inside.
Yeah, so he effectively mugs him.
Yeah. So this is when we get our opening credits. So they're different than the last ones, and it's like
Yes.
like you said, a bunch of images, including like an airplane, like a Pan Am airplane, setting the
Right.
tone of the '60s.
Hmm.
When did this one? This one came out in what?
This is like 1966.
65. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is after the first James Bond film. Actually, this is around the time the Thunderball came out. So
Hmm.
bit of a gap there. And
Yes.
we find Drake at an airport, and there's a woman arriving at the airport who gets into this nice car, and he follows her, and she arrives at an office which has a big sign for it, says the Society for Cultural Relations with South Africa.
Isn't this the same woman from before, by the way?
To be clear, yeah, this is the same woman who we saw in the South American countries. So
Right.
all the dots start connecting. And he goes into the office after her. We find out her name is Ms. Sophia Cooper, and that she has
Yes.
interests in Santa Marco, which is the country we saw earlier.
Hmm.
And she brings, culture and funding down there. And he tells her that, well, the money that you're sending down there is being funneled to agitators who want to bring down the government. And he wants to speak to whoever her financial backer is.
It's kind of funny. She's like, it's not my problem.
Yeah, she's like, I don't really care.
But I do like how she wasn't intimidated by him at all.
And so what's his cover here? He works for like a travel organization.
Yeah, I think he said something about how he wanted to bring tourists to Santa Marco.
Okay.
And
Is
I guess
that
the idea
always his cover, or does he have like different covers every episode?
So unfortunately, I did watch a few episodes, but it was like a long time ago before we covered these, so I don't really remember. I think he does a slightly different covers, but they're all pretty vague. They're all pretty international, travel related.
Gotcha. It's like how James Bond's cover sometimes is working for an import-export company.
So far, the only movie we've seen where he's had that was Dr. No, though.
There are
sure there are others.
quite a few where he has that same cover.
Are they all Connerys?
No.
Okay.
The company Universal Export pops up in as far as the Daniel Craig's as well.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, I mean that's from the novels, but we're not here to talk about James Bond today. We're here to talk about Danger Man.
Yes.
So Drake goes home. A piece of paper popped out of one of his drawers. So someone has been searching for stuff.
Yes.
So he goes. He makes a phone call. Fakes that he was saying, "Oh, thanks." It was a shop or something calling him that he has something that needs to pick up. Has a fake phone call, goes over the door, opens it, closes it to make it sound like he just left. But as he does, and he's all crouched down as he's doing this, someone draws a gun on him.
Yes.
But he managed to overtake them. They run out the door.
Yeah, I don't understand what the gunman was trying to accomplish here.
I don't know. Threatening him? Well, maybe he was just trying to get out. He was trying to search his house and then get out.
Yeah. Well, there's a part where he like slams the door on the guy's hand, and it looks like blood. Am I right? Am I wrong?
Maybe, but there's also like a very distinctive ring too. I thought that was gonna be, ooh, is that like tying into whoever he works for, like a Spectre ring?
But no,
But no.
Neither of these things come back.
So then he goes into Drake goes to what looks like a newspaper office, or is this his travel company?
I thought it was a newspaper.
Okay,
I don't think it's his company. I think this woman that he talks to is
that he
like
just
just one of
knows.
his friends' contacts.
Okay.
Yeah.
So her name's Pauline. She seems to be like running the show there, or is she just like a reporter? I couldn't really tell. Like that's the one thing. Like they don't give a lot of details. They just assume that you know what's going on.
No, you got to keep up. This episode is so slow in some parts and so fast in others. It's very difficult to follow. But I liked her like Money Penny vibe.
I was gonna say it's a very like Money Penny-ish flirting with him, and apparently she
Yes.
knows Sophia. She says that she's a manipulative career girl who's just trying to climb the ladder.
Well, hang on. Is it Sophia or Sylvia?
I
Is
thought it
her
was
name?
Sophia.
I thought it was
Let's check
Sylvia.
IMDb.
You want to check IMDb?
Yep.
Well, because Pauline says a girl named Sylvia, what a crazy thing, or something like that.
I thought. Well, so unfortunately, there are no captions for this, so we have no idea.
Sophia.
Certhia. Certhia. We were both wrong.
Oh my goodness, that's so funny.
I would, all right. So Certhia, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So she says she's very manipulative. She's just trying to, rise up in the world. Doesn't trust her one bit.
Yeah.
And of course, her ears must have been burning because she calls Pauline's number and somehow knows that Drake's there.
Well, they explain that. He's
What
like, I
was
left a message at my house that I was coming here.
Oh, that's right.
But I'm like, how does that work? I don't know. I don't want to deal with that.
I don't know. But she gives him Certhia. That's just so weird. Certhia says, I have someone who will want to talk to you about Santo Marco.
Yes.
And gives him directions to a penthouse. Drake goes up there and meets Lord Ammanford.
Another name that was hard to understand.
Yeah. I thought it was like Lord Hammond. I did go on IMDb. Did you recognize this guy?
Was he M?
He is M, yes.
Oh my goodness. Thank you.
This time you recognized him. I guess he didn't have a mustache this time.
Well, I'm like, he looks like M, but is he just a heavy-set old British guy?
So once I heard the voice, I'm like, oh, that's definitely M. M played by Bernard Lee in the first 13 James Bond films.
Yeah, right. The most famous one, I think.
Well, other than
the one
Judi
I
Dench.
know. Well, yeah, right. Besides her, the most known classic one. So basically, at this part, Drake is like, your money is not going where you want it to go. It's going to revolutionaries and stuff.
And apparently, Ammanford is investing in Santa Marco to try to bring them out of the Dark Ages, and all that. But but basically, he doesn't care if the money goes into revolutionaries as long as he gets his profit from it.
Yeah, and there's a part here where Drake is like, "And what about freedom?" Which, of course, is gonna remember that when we cover the prisoner next time. Because,
all right.
It gave me vibes for that.
Interesting. Okay, and so Ammanford asks, "Oh, how is Menton, by the way?" And Menton apparently is head of the Foreign Office, so who would be Drake's boss's boss, basically.
Yeah, so it indicates that he knows that Drake is like a secret agent, man.
Mm-hmm. Hey, that's the name of the show.
But he also shows that he has some power. That
yeah, he has
not
connections.
A pushover.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And there's a part here when they're leaving, and Cynthia is like, "Oh, I kind of like John Drake," and Lord Ammanford says, "What a pity."
Oh yeah, I like that. Oh, it was his wife who said.
His wife.
That, right?
Sorry, not Paul, not
Certhia.
Not Certhia. Yeah.
It was Lady Ammanford.
Yeah, which is it indicates that he's going to kill him, but then he never does. He barely even tries.
Yeah. And so Drake meets with Sir Joseph Menton, and Menton wants Drake to drop the matter. He puts him on leave for a month. So Drake goes home. Certhia is waiting for him there, which gave me vibes of the last episode. I was like, "Oh wait, are they trying to set him up for something again?"
Again, he keeps falling for it.
But no, so she's just there to taunt him, and it looks like he's all packed up to go somewhere. And so Drake goes to the airport. He's trying to get on a flight to Santa Marco. But I feel like we had this discussion for License to Kill. I couldn't remember what the name of the person who's at the ticket office is.
Yeah, I was the one who couldn't remember it last time.
Anyways, the attendant, shall we say, who works for the airline, or the ticket office person, is saying, "Oh, there's no seats left. Unfortunately, we had to cancel. You couldn't get you on a flight." But apparently, she was just on the phone with someone who was canceling their ticket, and like he even like goes over and sees like the plane's half full. Why don't you let me on? And Certhia's there behind him, who is getting on that flight, and taunts him some more.
I love this part. It's like our big tough secret agent is being foiled by like an airport bureaucrat.
Right.
And he just takes it too. It's not like he tries to sneak on board or use a false identity or anything. It's just like, okay.
I mean, how would he? I guess he could use like a Mission Impossible style mask to get on board.
I mean, something. Come on, this is like his job.
The reason why he cannot get on board is because Ammonford is the chairman of the airline, so he's already put his word through to don't let him on board, don't let him get through. So yes, Ammonford's got some connections there.
He's one step ahead of us the whole time.
So Drake goes back to Pauline, and Pauline gives him some details on Ammonford's background, and we find that he was born as Peter Jones, and he's Welsh, and gives him the name of his hometown, which is something in Welsh that I could not catch.
Forget it. It's like, oh my god, this whole part like broke me. I think also around here he says "be seeing you" to somebody, which is also from The Prisoner. So remember that.
Interesting. All right. So yeah, this took a complete left turn where I thought it was gonna go. I was like, oh, so he's gonna find some other way to get to Santa Marco. We're gonna have some intrigue there. No, he goes to go research Ammonford or Peter Jones's background.
Yes, and he does that for like the next 20 minutes.
So he talks to a pastor there, a school teacher, a grocer, a guy at the bar, and they all give all these different conflicting descriptions of Peter Jones. Mm-hmm. And so when he's in the bar talking to the very last guy who said, I knew him from, like he was like a son to me. And I was like, oh, really? So how would you describe him? I was like, oh, well, that's hard to say.
That was a little funny.
Yeah. So Drake gets a call from Pauline, who says, all right, I've located his first passport application, which gives his parents' names and their address. And apparently, Jones is a common enough last name. Common enough Welsh last name. I didn't know that Jones was a Welsh last name until I watched the episode of the Young Indiana Jones Chronicle. And if you're counting, that's the next time that I mentioned this. So, I feel like it's probably the fourth time I've mentioned it in the show. But
is it seriously a Welsh name though? I thought it was just British.
Apparently it is, because if they mention it there, they mention it here. So yeah, it sounds like it.
Oh, that's interesting.
So Drake goes to the location for that Pauline gave him, and as he's going there, he talks to someone, asks, "Oh, do you know Peter Jones?" "Oh, knew him like a brother. Known him since childhood." And then there's this funeral procession going on, and like, "Who is the funeral for?" "Oh, for Peter Jones."
Yeah, so he like goes to the funeral. It's like what? Okay, so he's at the funeral. Not too much to say about that.
No. But they go through the whole thing. They go through like the burial and everything. Mm-hmm. But someone at the funeral asks Drake for a ride back to the station because there's no bus stations nearby. And as it goes through, there's a car accident. So like the car had run into a ditch, and they ask Drake to give him a hand. So which of course he does. But as he's trying to help push out, they all stop pushing. Right. And like look at him, and he's like, "Wait, what's going on?" They have him at gunpoint. They don't shoot him, but they knock him out.
And then apparently they just leave him there. They don't do anything. Right? Because I think they also like work him over, because in the next scene he has like multiple injuries on his face.
That's true. Yeah. So, but we don't see any of that though, because the next scene is Drake going back to Ammonford. So
you know what this reminded me of? I know we talked about detective stuff, but it was like noir detective, like PI, like Sam Spade.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I could definitely see that. Mm-hmm. So Drake tells Ammonford that he visited Wales and asks how he knew Ruthin Jones and Bronwyn Jones, who are supposedly his parents. And he tries to get out of him why he changed his name. And at that moment, Lady Ammonford comes in and is telling Lord Ammonford, "Come to bed." Then Drake just leaves.
Yeah.
Drake's waiting for Sophie. Sophia's waiting for Drake in his home. She's trying to pay him off to drop the case.
They have like really good
£10,000.
banter at this part, right?
Yeah, yeah. And at that point, Pauline arrives at his house, and Surfia, because I forgot that that's not her name's not Sophia, it's Surthia,
Right,
who
Cyrthia, yeah.
leaves. And Pauline has more information.
Right.
Well, it's information about his wife, Lady Ammanford, and we find out that we find her nanny, because they're really going to any length to try to get any information real at this point.
Yeah. So isn't this the part with the photo?
Yes, so we meet Nanny, who was
Oh, the old lady, right?
the old lady, and she has like telling stories about Lady Ammanford, but doesn't really says she doesn't know Lord Ammanford very well, and he's asking, "Do you have photos of of her as younger?" Yeah, sure, I've got plenty of those. What about from their wedding? No, I don't have any of those. But he does see a photo of Lady Ammanford's sister at her wedding. And the chauffeur is very familiar looking.
Yes, it's M.
Yes, it's Lord Ammanford. What?
Dun dun.
Oh yeah, so he brings the photo back to Pauline, and yeah, we have that revelation that's Lord Ammanford, but we don't have any real information other than that. So Drake goes back to Nanny to see if he can get any more information out of her, but Nanny is on to Drake, and we get this one tidbit though, that he wasn't the family driver; he was a hired call, so it's not like he knew him very well.
Yeah.
So he goes over to where the local the local car company that hires out cars, and they say that, oh, a lot of them are like, oh, he's before my time, before the war, because it was in 1930.
I was gonna say it was like decades ago. Do you really expect them to remember this?
No, but there's apparently one worker, because this is in the days where you worked at a company and you stayed there for your life.
Yeah, he not only knows Lord Ammanforth or whatever, but he's willing to like commit all these crimes to protect him.
Who is?
This guy.
Oh,
this driver.
We're not there yet.
I know, it's a little bit of a preview.
Okay. They said there's someone who might know Lord Ammanford, and so who is it that like wrecks his car?
Okay, here's what I think happened. So no, they're driving.
Yeah.
And the guy that he's driving with, who has like the helmet and the goggles, like grabs the wheel or whatever.
Okay, so it's people from the hire car, like the car company. What?
But I don't remember what he said or how he was able to get himself into Drake's car.
Oh no, because he said, "Oh, I'll show you where the guy lives." That's how.
Okay. Yeah. So that's all legit.
Yeah, and so they crash his car. They pour some liquor on him to make it look like he was drunk driving, and Drake's arrested and brought to the police station, and they're going to put him in a cell, but he escapes, knocks out a cop, and steals a cop car.
Finally, some action. I mean, like, I know we just had some action, but finally, like, some legit, like, tension.
Yeah. And so he goes to visit the old driver, and the driver recognizes the photo that he has from the wedding, and says, "Oh, that's George Foster. I didn't trust him. He wasn't honest. He apparently left his wife and kids." Wait, what?
Oh my goodness, another twist. Just can't handle it.
Apparently someone, I think it was a cop. We're not sure. I don't know who this is actually. Someone comes looking for Drake at the old driver's house. And
There's
Drake
like so many freaking characters in this one.
Drake knocks him off, knocks out that guy, whoever's after him, steals his car. So now there's that cop car that was left behind, and drives to go find Mrs. Foster. And so he finds Mrs. Foster, finds out that they're not divorced because Mrs. Foster didn't believe in it. But he makes Lord Ammanford still send money back to Mrs. Foster to take care of the kids.
Right.
After finding out all of this, Drake goes back to Pauline's. Apparently, he's making some witty banter about harboring a fugitive.
Yeah, that was also really good.
The banter is good here. I'll say that.
Yeah.
And Surthia drops by. And she's looking for Drake, and Pauline's like, "Oh, Drake never comes around here." But like, she's trying to hide the fact that Drake's jacket is on the couch. And so like starts trying to distract her in other ways, and it gets to the point where the only way to distract her is to start a cat fight.
Yep.
So they're fighting, and as they're fighting, Drake comes out of the bathroom where I think he was like shaving or something, and like grabs his jacket and the important thing is inside his jacket was also the portfolio of all the information he's gathered.
Yeah, exactly. That's why she was willing to fight
Yeah.
Cynthia to keep her away. But this part was so funny that they're like fighting.
He just like grabs his jacket, sneaks out the door.
He's like, I'm out of here. He's like Homer Simpson going into the bushes. He's like, yeah, I'm out.
And so, finally, Drake goes back to Ammonford's. Ammonford tries to bribe Drake. Now it's up from 10,000 to 20,000 pounds. But
not bad.
Drake's like, nope, I've got my own information, and tells him all the information has about how he's a bigamist.
Not cool in 1965.
Nope. But Amford's like, yeah, no, that doesn't matter. No reputable newspaper will publish this story, and it won't affect my businesses. And as he's saying this, his wife comes in and like seeing if a jacket sleeve will fit him. Maybe I think he's making something for him. And Drake now says, all right, if you're not all of your businesses in Santo Marco in 20 minutes, I have 200 copies of this packet, and I'm going to send a copy to every influential editor. And even if not everyone publishes it, someone will, and your wife will see that story. So he's blackmailing him to get him to pulling out of Santa Marco.
Right. Remember Santa Marco?
Oh, yeah, right. What happened to that?
That's what this is about.
So Ammonford says, all right, fine, I'll pull out of Santa Marco, all my money out of Santa Marco. He makes all these calls. Drake has this like very specific statement for him to make that says, that I've discovered that, my money has been going to revolutionaries and not to where I thought they would.
Yeah.
And so once he's done making all those calls, leaves the packet with Ammonford and says, take care of it. It's the only copy. So he's bluffing him.
Mm.
All right. Did you have any? So that's the end of
the episode. Yes.
So did you have any favorite notes from this episode?
Yeah, I did. I had a few, and I hope I don't take any of yours because I'm going to say a bunch of them.
All right. Well, let me go first because I had one.
Okay, go ahead. Yes.
He said it's Lord Ammonford. He says to Drake, he's like, "You've got a very old-fashioned idea of capitalism, Drake." And then Drake says, "Or a very old-fashioned idea of democracy."
Democracy. Yeah.
So
I like Patrick McGoohan.
I like that Drake's whole motivation is, all right, I want to protect the people who were there who apparently had were just reaching for democracy, and he's like, and Ammonford's trying to ruin that for him so he can make money.
Okay, yeah, I like you like those like serious quotes. Okay,
sometimes I like goofy quotes.
That's true. Okay, so here's some of mine. I like the part where Pauline saying about Cynthia or whatever. She's predatory, scheming megalomaniac. Which is like, she doesn't come off that way in the actual show. I mean, she doesn't seem like the greatest person in the world, but
I'd be interested to come back to this and wonder if she's like a recurring character.
That's a good point. I don't know.
We don't know. I don't know.
Okay, so other quotes I like is by Ammonforth. He says, "I'm too rich to have problems." And then finally, Drake says to Cynthia, "What I like about myself is the way I don't like you." So that's some solid banter.
That's pretty good. All right, so shall we get into the spy fact versus spy fiction? You can tell us what you have.
Okay, so I don't have anything written down, but I read a little bit about this show. So the first episode that we watched was part of season 1 that went, and it didn't do very well in the ratings. It got canceled. But then it on the original Star Trek, it got popular in reruns and people wanted it to come back, which it did a few years later. So the first one was in 1960, and then I think it started again in 1965 for 3 more seasons.
The second time was like a wholly British production, right? As opposed to the first time it was more like American backing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. So Patrick McGoohan was involved as like a producer when it came back. And he apparently was like religious or something. So he didn't want John Drake character to kiss anybody who wasn't his wife. So he wasn't kissing anybody because he doesn't have a wife. And other stuff like that. Like, you think he didn't want him to kill people if it could be avoided.
Okay.
So he like rarely kills people in the entire run of the series.
Interesting.
Yeah. So.
Well, not that we really saw him kill anyone in the first episode we watched.
No, but it's not like he didn't have opportunities to.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the show doesn't. That sort of its big claim to fame, besides the theme song, is that it's the run up to The Prisoner, which we will talk about next time.
Yeah. All right. So, how do you want to rate our second episode that we watched from 1 to 10 martinis?
Okay, I will. Okay, yeah, our ratings: 10 being amazing, a great episode of television, and 1 being absolutely horrible. So, I really like Patrick McGoohan. I like the banter. The action where it was really good, but this story was terrible. It was so boring. It was just like him walking around and talking to people about like really, I don't know. I think I made my point. It was really slow. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10.
Okay. I'm with you there. Like, I like the first half of this episode when he's like investigating, but before, like up to the point where he tries to go to Santa Marco, I'm like, all right, I'm interested. But then when it goes to like, off to the Wales countryside, I'm like, wait, what is going on?
Yeah, they need to space out their action a little bit.
I don't know, but I like the banter, and I liked Bernard Lee as a villain because you don't often see him as a villain, or at least for me, like I usually see him as M.
Right. Patrick McGoohan's really good, but the stuff he's in is just old, and that's hard. That's hard to watch.
Yeah. So I'm gonna give it a 5. I'm gonna be a little bit kinder than you, but yeah.
As usual. Okay, well, that is it for Danger Man / Secret Agent. Thank you for joining us. You can find us on social media at the Spy-Fi Guys under Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Until next time, I'm Zach.
And I'm Christian.
And we are the Spy-Fi Guys signing off.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed our podcast, please be sure to rate and review us on iTunes. The theme music is by Jer Fitzgerald and Big Man Joe. Media reviewed by our podcast are the intellectual property of their respective copyright holders, and no infringement is intended.
This is a personal podcast. Any views, statements, or opinions expressed in this podcast are personal and belong solely to the participants. They do not represent those of people, institutions, or organizations that the participants may or may not be associated with in a professional or personal capacity unless explicitly stated. Any views or opinions are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, or individual.
You can find our podcast on social media at the Spy-Fi Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.